Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell from the title of today's video, I wanted to sit down and have a little chat. Now, I know there's the unpopular opinions book tag, but today I just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about my unpopular opinions when it comes to the book community. Now, this can be books in general, it can be on different types of books, it can be on different types of authors, whatever it may be, but I really like these videos. These are some of my favorite videos to watch, so I thought I would give a shot at filming, without any kind of prompts, my unpopular bookish opinions. I'm gonna start out with one that I feel like a lot of people are really gonna come for me for. I hate deckled edges. I think deckled edges are the most frustrating type of book to read. I genuinely do not like having to flip through my book, and a lot of the time it makes it more annoying to me. I feel like it makes the experience, I mean they look nice, but it makes the actual experience of reading the book incredibly annoying. I don't like Bible pages. I don't like those thin ass pages of books that people do, and people are always like, oh well, it makes a bigger book seem smaller, like the actual size of the book can be smaller because the pages is smaller. I don't like that. I have big man hands and I like to accidentally rip my books all the time, so if we could go back to having normally thick pieces of paper, that would be great. I actually think that paperbacks are far superior to hardback books. I know there's a lot of privilege shit going on right now on YouTube where people are like, oh well, if you can't buy a hardback book, people only like paperback books because they can't afford the hardback. No, I genuinely just don't like reading hardback books. I used to love it, but I hate holding giant hunking books. I would rather at that point read them on my phone. I'd rather read a phone like ebook than ever pick up a hardback book. They genuinely really upset me. The best books that you will ever find are the big floppy paperback books. Those are my favorite. I don't actually see anything wrong with mass market paperbacks. I have heard of a lot of people getting rid of them because they're not pretty or they're annoying to have, but I actually really like them. I think it's because I was reading Stephen King from a very young age, and a lot of the books by Stephen King that I had were mass market paperbacks. He's also a really big fan of pocketbooks, so books that you can just stick in the back pocket of your jeans. If girl pants ever actually had pockets on them, that's what I would do. I actually really like those books. I have entire shelves of mass market paperbacks. My entire Robin Hobb collection is mass market paperbacks. My Otherland series by Tad Williams are mass market. I actually genuinely really love those. They're pretty inexpensive usually as well. And a lot of the time they are older books, so you can find them at used bookstores for an incredibly cheap price. I don't understand people who take dust jackets off of books. I get it if you do it while you're reading it, but it actually really bugs me when people take them off and leave them off. I had a friend, a coworker, who took her dust jackets off every single one of her books, and to this day probably still doesn't know where they are. And that really upsets me because a lot of people put time and money and effort into designing and making those, like the artists that do them as well, and it's just a good representation of the book, and I feel like it should stay on your shelves. If you want to take it off while you're reading it, that's fine, but I think you should put them back. Another thing that I really don't like is people who organize their shelves in really ridiculous ways. I think that it makes sense to do something in a I would say like alphabetical by author, or alphabetical, because it tends to be authors who they write within the same genre. So if you want to organize it by genre, that's cool too. I organize my shelves by series. So if an author has written multiple series go together, same author. So I guess you could say I do it by author. And I don't understand, this is a really unpopular opinion. Yes, it looks really cool, but all black and white shelves, really annoying. People who take the dust jackets off and just have dust jackets, really annoying. People who turn their books the other way, what are you doing? That's like my least favorite. I understand why some people do it, but it genuinely really upsets me. I also don't like people who do things in rainbow shelves. Yes, very pretty. It's gonna make your Instagram look great, but how the fuck are you ever gonna find that one book that you're looking for? Unless you have a didactic memory and you can be like, oh yeah, I forget, that book is green, so it's gonna be in my green section. I have over 400 books, and there's no way in hell that I would ever be able to find any book I'm looking for. I did rainbow shelves for like, I think it was like 4 days, and I was like, nah, I know this was a pain in the ass to do, but I'm immediately going to put everything back. There are a lot of authors that I say are overrated. My least favorite author of all time has to be Maggie Smith. I know a lot of people are going to come for me for this, but she is my least favorite author on the planet. I do not like anything she's ever written. I feel like she's completely overrated. I think that as a person, Maggie's kick-ass. She's awesome. When it comes to her writing style, not for me. I did not like any books that she has ever written. I also don't own any anymore. Really sad because some of those were gifts, but I wanted to pass them along to people who would really like them, and unfortunately Maggie is just not the author for me. Stephen King needs to stay in his own lane. As somebody who has been reading Stephen King for a very long time, this might come as an unpopular opinion because I've actually been seeing this floating around on Instagram recently. Stephen has kind of moved away from horror and moved a little bit more into thriller and mystery. And while a natural progression for an author, this is totally normal. A lot of authors' writing tastes change and genre changes, and that's fine. Now, when I read Stephen King's newer stuff like The Outsider and Mr. Mercedes, yes, I like them. Do I think that they come anywhere close to his original stuff? No, not at all. I think that his original horror, that is the bread of Stephen King. That is what got him his title, and that is, I feel like, the only reason people really like his new stuff is because they're like, oh, but it's by Stephen King, and yes, he's a good author, and yes, his stuff's pretty good, but like, his horror is so much better. And I feel like people who are like, oh, well, I just love all of his stuff. Yeah, but you can definitely tell that there's a little bit of a difference. I've never read a Stephen King book and been like, oh, this is not 5 stars until the last like 3 or 4 years, and I've been sorely disappointed, and I feel like he's money sucking most of the time. Speaking of money suck, I really got to talk about a few authors, I'm not going to name them, within our community that are really just coming for our pocketbooks. There have been a few series and a few continuation of series, new duologies and such that have been created recently, new add-ons to series that probably should have ended. And I don't like that. I feel like it's very apparent when authors are just trying to get money from their audience, and I feel like a lot of the time they're just trying to be like, oh, well, they really like this character, so if I write this whole nother book, I'm not gonna name names here, but you probably know what I'm talking about, then my audience is gonna buy it and they're gonna love it, and I don't appreciate that. I feel like people need to be given good writing, not just you trying to make our fanfic dreams come true. There are websites for that. I don't need you to write a book and then tell me it's gonna be the most glorious thing ever and charge me fucking $20 for it, when literally I can go to a website for free and somebody will have probably written something better. Another unpopular opinion that I feel like is just in the book community and not anywhere else, I feel like a lot of the time, authors are maybe a little too involved. Yes, that's right, people, I said it. As much as I appreciate talking to my favorite authors online, as much as I appreciate being able to converse with them, I feel like there is a little bit of too much of that happening. Now, this doesn't often happen, but it does happen. I've seen it a lot recently, where authors are I read a book recently that really felt like, to me, the author was just trying to placate the audience, the friendships that they have built with their audience. And while that's nice to have, I was really disappointed in the book because I felt like it was just their way of trying to be like, look, I hear you, I see you, let me give you this thing, when the book was actually really bad, and I don't like that. I feel like authors should be a little less involved because it also blurs the line between what happens then if your favorite author that you talk to writes a really shitty book. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, even my favorite authors that sometimes I converse with, we don't have like these crazy friendships, and it's because we met through their writing, and what if later I don't like something that they write? That's a really important thing to start paying attention to. And BookTube and Bookstagram and Book Twitter and just the authors and reader relationship in general, I feel like, is a very, very fine line, and a lot of us are walking it a little too closely. I used to love historical fiction, but I realized more so recently that historical fiction just isn't my jam. Now, this is going to be a really unpopular opinion, but I find historical fiction incredibly boring these days. As somebody who really loves history, I used to read a lot of it because it was like hearing my favorite stories just told in a different way, and I used to really like that. But a lot of the time it gets a little bit repetitive because you're only working with like historical parts of history, you know what I'm trying to say here. And so a lot of the base story is the same. So the only thing that really changes is characters. And a lot of the time I feel like the characters are pretty lackluster. So for me, I don't feel like historical fiction as a genre is one of my favorites. That also comes to retellings here. I don't like retellings. I wish we would stop. I understand that there is a place for them because I feel like a lot of the time when it comes to like people of color and wanting to see themselves in retellings or wanting to see themselves in like overdone genres, like, you know, like the vampire stuff and, you know, all of that, it's important for them to have a voice. But for me, I don't care about retellings. I'm so over it. The only author that does retellings that I really like is Kiersten White. I really, really love the retellings that she does. And for me, I'm just running out of want to keep wanting to read them. There's just nothing that's really coming out recently that I'm like, yeah, I really, really, really absolutely have to read that. And that's really sad because they used to be one of my favorite genres. We have to do away with hype. I don't know how often a book will come out and some of the most popular people in BookTube or whatever, some of the most listened to people in BookTube will be like, this was a great book. And then all I hear about is how much everybody fucking hated it, but no one, you know, like I'll read a review and it'll be like on Goodreads and people will be like, oh, I didn't really like this book, this is why. Okay, cool. But I never really hear people really gush about why they didn't like it. And I feel like it's like that fear of those bigger booktubers said that they really liked it, so I'm afraid to give my opinion. Recently, I read King of Scars. I fucking hated that book. I gave it 2 stars. I was so disappointed with it. And there were so many bigger booktubers who'd read it and absolutely loved it. I didn't like Strange the Dreamer. There were so many booktubers who absolutely loved that series and swear by it. And when I was writing my reviews for both of those books, I was a little bit afraid because I didn't want people to think that I was lying or that I was dumb or I didn't understand what was happening. And no, that's just my opinion on the book. And I'm really tired of the hype, holding people back from really talking about why they didn't like something, because honestly, not liking something is very important. So if you don't like a book and you talk about it, maybe that thing that you didn't like is somebody's favorite fucking thing to read about. Or maybe it's important for people who have same reading tastes as you to not borrow that book from the library or not buy that book if that's how they choose to do stuff, but just be able to have access and information and know like, okay, I don't need to read that book. I don't care. That person didn't care about that book. I'm probably not going to care about that book because XYZ, we've liked every single book that the other person has read. So I feel like negative reviews are incredibly important. Another thing I want to talk about is I actually don't really mind spoilers. I have read a few books that I have seen complete spoilery reviews for and been like, yeah, I'm still really gonna like that book. I'm also one of those people who can watch a show or watch a movie or whatever if I've been completely spoiled by it. Anytime I go back and watch older shows, chances are people have already talked about that. I already know what's gonna happen. I already know the whole story. And for me, that's not a turnoff. So I'm not one of those people that's afraid of Twitter. I am not one of those people who hides and like doesn't, you know, like tries to avoid spoilers and stuff. I understand why people do that, but for me personally, it's not that big of a deal. If somebody wants to slightly spoil something for me, yeah, I don't really care. It's not going to ruin the whole story. And if a book can be spoiled by little tidbits of information, then the book's probably bad anyway. That's probably another unpopular opinion. If somebody can mention something very small and that can ruin a book for you, then the book probably sucked because there wasn't enough substance in the book to keep you wanting to read anyway. Books should not just have one big story. It should have a ton of other little stories running through it that really make you engaged and wanting to keep reading. So if a book is so easily spoiled, chances are it's probably a bad book anyway. Another unpopular opinion I think I have, or I feel like a lot of people probably have, is if you go back and change a review later or change your mind on a book, then you didn't fully understand the book to begin with. And that pisses me off. So as a reader, what tends to happen when you're reading a book is you get into it, you really love it. Prime example for me, the ACOTAR series. I loved that series when it first came out. I was so into it. I was there for Rhysand. I loved that series. And then I read the 3rd one and was like, this is shit. And then read A Court of Frost and Starlight or whatever and was like, all right, I'm selling my entire series. Sold the entire series. Yes, I loved ACOMAF so much. But I realized after a while that the hype had died down for me, or my reading tastes had changed, or what I found important in a book had changed. And that's normal and that's natural. You should be growing and changing. And I hate when people are like, oh, you just didn't understand, or you didn't really get what the book is about, and that's why you loved it, or you lied for the hype or whatever. No, hype is a very real thing, but I feel like a lot of the times people's opinions on books just change. Let them just change. We don't need to police everything that everybody else is doing. Another unpopular opinion I'm gonna have here comes to do with strong female main characters. I have always had a love-hate relationship with strong females. I am a strong female, I would like to think. I think that the ladies in my life tend to be strong females, but for some reason when it comes to writing strong female characters, there are very few authors that actually pull it off. The only strong female characters that I've read that I haven't been completely turned off on were the female characters in Soft Kill Girls, the female characters in the Bloody Rose and Kings of the Wild, and then also anything by Alex White. So A Bad Deal for the Whole Galaxy, those books. Other than that, you can count everybody else out. I don't like strong female characters in books most times. I feel like, especially in the YA genre or in the YA characterization, the female main characters are so over the top. The author that I think does this the most would actually have to be V.E. Schwab. Don't get me wrong, I love her writing, but her characters are pretty much the same. Like, I don't like Lila. I don't like any of the main characters, female main characters in any of her other series, because I feel like they're very over the top. I feel like they're very heavy-handed. And I feel like a lot of the time, and this isn't just her, a lot of authors do this, especially within YA, and it genuinely upsets me. I feel like the characters who are given so much power are often, it's just taken away from them and they just become pawns. And I feel like a lot of the time they don't really understand what is a strong female character. A strong female character is not just argumentative. A strong female character is not just hot-headed. A strong female character isn't just somebody who's like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do when I wanna do it. That's not a strong female character. That's a pain in the ass. And I'm so tired of reading about those characters. Selena from Throne of Glass. I hated her, and I didn't really start to love her till she became more realistic, till her struggles really started happening, and you could really see what female strength actually was. Not saying she's a great female main character, but I started liking her more because of that. I feel like the badass, can do no wrong, gonna do what they want to do female main characters are really cookie cutter and honestly pretty fucking boring and pretty unrealistic. I feel like they're just too badass in a way, and it's like our attempt at making up for the fact that women aren't represented that great in books, and I hate it. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to reading from some of my very, very favorite authors. All right, guys, so that is gonna be it for this video. I have a ton more. I could do a part 2 on this, but this is really just my unpopular opinions. I'm gonna start making a list and then probably film another one, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know down below if you agree with any of these. Let me know down below your top most unpopular opinion when it comes to booktube, bookstagram, book Twitter, reading in general. Let me know down below, but I love you guys a lot. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.